Imagine you're walking along the beach on a calm morning. Suddenly, the sea begins to recede at an impossible speed, kilometers inward, revealing sunken ships and fish flapping on the wet sand. What seems like a fascinating miracle is actually nature's most deadly trap. Today, I'm going to tell you the story of the day. A wall of water devoured the southern coasts of Spain. And the most terrifying thing is not how it happened, but why experts warn that it is about to happen again. Stay until the end, because I will reveal the exact place where seismologists are already expecting the next big hit. November 1st, 1755, All Saints' Day. The bells are ringing throughout Andalusia, and the churches of Cadiz and Huelva are filled with faithful dressed in their finest attire. It is a radiant autumn morning, one of those that does not foretell anything dark. But at 9:40 in the morning, the earth roars. It is not just any tremor, it is an earthquake estimated at a magnitude of 9, one of the most violent in the history of humanity, with its epicenter hundreds of kilometers off the coast of Lisbon. For 6 endless minutes, the ground turns to jelly, the cathedral lamps sway like frenzied pendulums, and the houses creak. But strangely, when the shaking finally stops, people breathe a sigh of relief, thinking the worst is over. They did not know that the real monster had just awakened in the cold depths of the Atlantic. While the survivors thanked God, the ocean began to behave unnaturally. On the coasts of Huelva and Cadiz, the sea suddenly receded. Curiosity killed the cat, and that day, it killed thousands. Hundreds of people walked fascinated by the newly exposed seabed to collect the fish trapped in the pools. No one had taught them what that enormous emptiness meant. No one knew that the sea was not drying up, it was gaining momentum. What came next was a wall of black water, roaring like 1,000 cannons, that wiped entire towns off the map and left an indelible scar in the history of Spain. How did some survive? And why did the Church and the Inquisition have to intervene in what they considered the beginning of the apocalypse? To understand the magnitude of this nightmare, we have to put ourselves in the shoes of the people of the time. In the 18th century, there were no seismographs, no alerts on mobile phones, no sirens on the beaches. The only logical explanation for a catastrophe of this scale was divine wrath. When the initial earthquake struck, the vibration of the earth was so brutal that it was felt from northern Europe to northern Africa. In Spain, the bell towers of Seville cracked, and the water from rivers and fountains violently leaped from their courses. But the real drama, the final punishment, was brewing at sea. After the waters receded, the first giant wave took approximately 1 hour to reach the Andalusian coasts. Imagine the scene in the city of Cadiz, a city almost completely surrounded by the sea, heavily fortified to protect against pirate attacks. That same wall, built to withstand cannon fire, was about to face the greatest siege in its history. The royal chronicles of the time, which are still preserved, tell that the sea rose, creating waves that in some places exceeded 15 meters in height. When crashing against the solid defenses of Cadiz, the roar was deafening. The water leaped over the walls of the Viña neighborhood, with unprecedented violence, sweeping away everything in its path: carriages, animals, debris, and those who couldn't run fast enough to the higher areas of the city. But if the tragedy in Cadiz was colossal, what happened on the coasts of Huelva was, literally, the end of the world. The waves there did not encounter high stone walls to crash against. They found open beaches, marshes, and entire fishing villages with nowhere to flee. Towns like Ayamonte or Lepe suffered a devastating impact, and the entire geography of southern Spain changed in a matter of hours. Places like the historic island of Salte disappeared underwater, erased from the map as if they had never existed. The level of annihilation and despair was such that the survivors from the devastated areas had to band together and establish a completely new settlement from scratch. This is how what we now know as Isla Cristina was born. But let's go back to Cadiz for a second, because something happened there that seems straight out of a suspense movie script. While the people, in absolute panic, tried to escape the city through the narrow sand isthmus that connects it to the peninsula, the civil governor made a drastic decision. A decision that at that precise moment seemed like a cruel madness. He ordered the land gates to be shut tight. Imagine the scene. Thousands of terrified people pounding on the thick wooden doors, begging to leave the city while hearing the dull roar of the ocean behind them. They thought the governor had condemned them to death. But it was exactly the opposite. The tsunami completely swept over the outer isthmus. If those gates had been open, thousands of people from Cadiz would have run directly into the jaws of the water. That relentless order blocked the path to death and saved the city from an absolute massacre. Even so, the toll along the entire coast was tragic. In towns like Conil de la Frontera, the water came in with such fury that it tore fishing boats from their moorings and smashed them against houses. The streets turned into dark rivers full of debris. The churches, which that morning were filled with families for the festivity, became improvised shelters where the icy water reached the waists of the faithful who prayed loudly. How does the human mind process something like that in 1755? There was no science to explain it to the average citizen. For the society of the time, the answer was as evident as it was terrifying. It was a direct punishment from God. The churches that remained standing were filled with lamentations. Desperate processions were organized among the rubble and mud, bringing saints and virgins out into the streets to plead for mercy, convinced that the end of times had begun. However, in the midst of that mystical terror, something revolutionary happened. King Ferdinand VI from Madrid did not sit idly by praying. He did something unprecedented in the history of Spain. He ordered a detailed questionnaire to be sent to all the towns in the kingdom to find out exactly what had happened, how many people had died, and how the earth had behaved. Without knowing it, they were conducting one of the first seismological and disaster prevention studies in history. But the question that sends shivers down the experts' spines today is not what happened in 1755, but what is happening right now under the dark waters of the Atlantic. Because that geological fault has not disappeared. It is still there. That is the harsh reality, the Azores-Gibraltar fault. The underwater scar that ruptured in 1755 remains active. And it is not the only one. The entire Gulf of Cadiz is a swarm of tectonic faults that accumulate tension year after year, century after century. Geologists call it the seismic cycle. Imagine a thick rope the two giants are slowly stretching from each end. For decades, it seems like nothing is happening, but the tension is still there, silently accumulating, and at some point, the rope breaks. The most recent scientific studies are chilling. A tsunami on the southern and eastern coasts of Spain is not a science fiction movie hypothesis. It is a geological certainty. It's not a question of if it will happen, but when. In fact, seismologists estimate that catastrophic events of a magnitude similar to Lisbon occurred in this area every 400 or 500 years approximately. But other tsunamis of lesser intensity have hit the peninsula much more recently. Are we prepared today? That is the question that chills the blood. If today, on the 1st of November, with the beaches full of people walking under the sun, the sea were to retreat kilometers inward, how many would know what to do? In 1755, there was no way to warn the population. But today, paradoxically, overconfidence and misinformation could be our greatest enemy. Many people would stay recording with their phones instead of running. Fortunately, not everything is bad news. Some cities have started to awaken to the monster. Chipiona, in Cadiz, has made history by becoming the first municipality in Spain to receive the Tsunami Ready certificate from UNESCO. They have installed sirens, mapped out safe evacuation routes, and most importantly, they are educating the population, from children in schools to fishermen at the port. Because when the earth shakes and you have the sea in front of you, the first 15 minutes are the difference between life and death. There is no time to take the car because of traffic jams. There is only time to go high and fast. At the beginning of the video, I promised to reveal the exact place where experts expect the next big hit. And the answer is right in front of us, under the dark waters of the Atlantic, in the region of the Gulf of Cadiz and Cape St. Vincent. Today, the National Geographic Institute and the Tsunami Warning Centers monitor this area 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They have special buoys offshore designed to detect the slightest bulge in the ocean. If that fault were to awaken again with the fury of 1755, the giant wave would take just about 40 or 50 minutes to hit the Andalusian coast. Next time they won't catch us praying blindly in churches, but the force of the ocean will be exactly the same. The question now is, will we be faster than the water? That All Saints' Day in 1755, the ocean reminded us how small we are. Those men and women had no alarms or evacuation maps. They only had each other in the face of the abyss. Today, Looking at the sea from the coasts of Cadiz or Huelva is like looking at a sleeping giant. Respect it, enjoy it, but never forget its strength. If this story has moved you as much as it has me, subscribe, leave your like, and share this video with someone who lives on the coast, because knowing our history is sometimes the best way to save our future. See you in the next video.